Good morning, afternoon, and evening to our listeners across the globe, and welcome to N12D. Today is episode number 20. In the studio with my co host, Susie Van in Ireland, and I am in Lima, Peru, and we have a special guest with us. Susie will introduce.
Welcome, everybody. It's so good to be here again this week as the sun is shining in Ireland. This week is, like I say this all the time, each week it keeps getting better and better, but this one is a real special one, I have to say, this week, because the guest on this evening's podcast is somebody who really inspires me, and I think she's just got so much to share that I'm really feeling lucky that we have her. She's traveled very far and wide to be with us tonight, and I really appreciate that. So I want to just issue a really warm welcome from my heart to a friend and an amazing woman. Her name is Venerable Aileen Barry, also known as Thubten Chotso, and I'm not sure if I got that right, but Aileen is a Buddhist nun, and she lives quite a life. We've decided to call this episode "Stillness Behind Bars." A nun who walks between worlds, and truly, every time I connect with Aileen, she's either coming or going somewhere, like from one end of the world to the other, constantly teaching and sharing her dharma and her wisdom. And just want to really welcome you this evening, Aileen, and thank you for all the effort you've given to be here with us tonight.
It's a pleasure to be here, Susie and Ramsey. Yeah, thank you so much. And it's wonderful that you do this. And as you say, that it just gets better every week. That's fantastic. And I'm not surprised because I know that you steward it so well. So well done.
Thank you. Well, we every week we love to have these brilliant guests on whose lives have taken extraordinary kind of directions, and people who've taken incredible journeys. And Aileen, you shifted from an ordinary life. Well, it probably wasn't that ordinary at the time, but shifted from what seemed like the normal everyday life about 20 years ago, and something called you in to shift gears or to change direction, and what ended up becoming like following Buddhism and the Dharma, which led to ultimately you becoming a nun. So I'd love would you give us some little kind of background on that time in your life when it started to shift for you?
Sure. And as I say, Susie, please stop me if I go off on side stories. And so in my late 20s, I was living in London, and a lot of things that I was trying to put together, a career, a relationship, accommodation, it was all sort of in those formative years. That's what you're trying to do. And it all fell apart quite dramatically. And I had been working in various social work positions and working with a charity, and it turned out that their director was embezzling, and that just exploded and left us all very shocked. And my relationship at the same time sort of equally, had an explosion. And so I was very raw and open and querying what to do. And in that space, as we do, I went for help, and I had some. I was going to see a therapist, and I was living in London, and my uncle, a priest in Ireland, Father Pat, who has since died, a wonderful man, and a very in our family and in the church, a very upright and kind of scary, good heart, and quite strong in his views. He was on his way to the Vatican and had a long stopover in London. And I guess because I was in therapy, I was asserting myself. And when he rang and said, let's spend the day together, rather than going out to the airport, as he suggested, I invited him to come into the centre of London. And I thought, we'll go to something together. There must be a good exhibition somewhere. And so I brought him to an exhibition because of the venue, not because of what was happening. It was an exhibition on Tibetan Buddhism, and all I can say is, you're talking about extraordinary lives. I feel like we have to return to ordinary, and so it seemed very ordinary in that moment for me to go into that exhibition, even though I would say my censorship wasn't working to say, Father Pat's not interested. You don't know where Tibet is. You're not interested in Buddhism. Why are you doing this? It just seemed a very ordinary thing to go in there. I wasn't doing it to stir up a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So we went in, and there was somebody sort of having a meditation, sort of standing in the middle of the room, and she may even have been chanting, and my uncle just shook his head and said, I'm out of here. And again, it seemed to me very ordinary that I did not go with him. I said, I'll come when I'm ready. And so, it was so inappropriate in some ways. You're leaving your guest outside. And I just said, but he also said, stay as long as you want. And I walked into a room and I saw some Tibetan monks. And as I say, all of this was foreign to me. And when I saw them, they had been making a sand mandala. I can still see them, and the sense that I had was they were free of something. They were ordinary. They were very open and relaxed and connecting with whoever came near them, just including whoever came near them very automatically. And I think up until that point, when I reflect back on it, it was what they didn't have that was attractive to me. Because I always thought you had to add something, the career, the money, anything, that constant seeking. If I get this, then it'll be okay. So there was something about that just, and in my mind, I went, where is Tibet? And really that's what triggered me to, I got Australian residency. So that was the response to everything falling apart in London. And I was going out there with some good friends, but I also started studying homeopathy, and India called. I felt very drawn to go there, and it was on the way. Homeopathy is well developed there, so that was one of the strings. But there was something about Buddhism as well that was just starting to, I hadn't read anything, but it was, the pull was there. So then I did stop in India. I did do some homeopathic training in Delhi. And then I went up to the Himalayas. I actually, and again, this was very out of the ordinary for me. I decided that I was going to trek across from Manali towards Dharamsala, where His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan refugees are. I was just about turning 30 at this stage. And I hadn't had that outdoor background of, climbing mountains. And so it was very out of culture, and it was winter. And so the local guides were saying, the season's closed. There's snow coming and you can't do this. But I kept going, no, it's okay. We will. And so there was a group of 6 of us and 21 donkeys and guides. and we went for 2 weeks. We didn't come across much. I think maybe 2 villages along the way. And it was, the snow did come. So it was very edgy. Then got to Dharamsala, and I did an introduction to Buddhism course. And I think my prevailing surprise during that course was I didn't know that you could explain reality. And it seemed to me that that's what was happening, that they were giving you an explanation of your, I guess it's not the external world or the internal world, but the interdependent scenario. And it was being translated for 10 days. We had teachings on it's called the Heart Sutra. So this it's really not beginners, but it was a beginner's course. at the end of each of the teacher would be explaining, explaining interdependence, and in Tibetan, it would then be translated. And by the end of the translation, I'd be like, what? Like, what's he saying? And I think everybody in the room was just like, we would tighten up as we were listening. And then at the end of the translation, the Tibetan teacher would look at us and go, okay. And he would burst out laughing. And each time he did it, he sort of, we were able to drop down again and hear the next bit and get all tight again. And then he'd go, okay. And that was for 10 days.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. What an introduction. Like it really, it's a really magical moment, I guess, being in that, the gallery in London, being in that space and just like pinning it back to that point where the art, where the ambience, where the monks who were in there, the other people who were there chanting or meditating, as you said, sort of just were the spark that ignited something in you that sent you on this incredible trajectory. So did you find that like it was a quick slope all the way down, landing into like, okay, I'm going full on in to become a nun now, like, you know what I mean, from that? Or was that another rockier road, or like what time frame is that roughly, like, if you want to share?
Well, it was, so that was in I was 30. It wasn't there were still many things that were going to happen, and I didn't have a sense of ordaining at that point at all. Not absolutely not. But I was getting more and more interested, definitely in I was seeking out teachings. I also met the man that I ended up marrying in Dharamsala at that teaching. He was from Australia. I was on my way to Australia. I had my Australian residency at that point. So we married. At the end of our 10 days, and I just called it up here, at the end of our 10-day retreat, they read us some of T.S. Eliot's poem, and I'll just read what we were given. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown, remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. At the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall, and the children in the apple tree, not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard, in the stillness between two waves of the sea.
Wow.
So I heard that, and I knew that I needed to go back to Ireland instead of that, that not known because not looked for. I had been running.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed to go back to the beginning and to rest in that space and to honor my parents, also to honor my birthplace and to connect to it more deeply. I think what I realized genuinely, and this was a phrase I was using a lot during the Buddhist teachings as well, the introduction course, was that I had thrown the baby out with the bathwater when I had, I had walked away from Catholicism, but I hadn't. I had thrown away the spirituality of it as well. So I wanted to come back to all of that. So that's what I did. Came back and came with Michael. We got married in Ireland. All our parents and us as well. I think we were all a little bit like, what? How? Like, where did that come from? We got married in Guggaunbarra, which for any, it's the source of the River Lee, which is the river that runs through the city that Susie and I are our mother town, and it's also the seat of a monastic settlement. It's a very beautiful place, a really sacred,
very special.
Yeah. And
I tried to get married there back when I was getting married in the 90s, and I was getting married from Germany, and I was coming home for that, and they were like, "No, it's too far away." I was like, "What?" But like it was the only place that I felt I could connect with, and they were like, "No, no, no. There's a new church now in Rochestown. You can go there." So it's funny, like how places like that are so special. Like I go back there regularly. We bring the group there when they come to Ireland for the retreat as well. It's such a beautiful place. Like, so that sounds like the optimal setting for a very special, commitment as well. Wow.
Absolutely. And Susie, I went back there actually just a couple of, I have been back at various times. I went there with Jetsunma one time. But I went back maybe about 3 months ago, and when I walked into the church, and this is a very small church, anybody who's been there, I don't know, it's less than 100 people can fit into it.
Yeah, less, I'd say, yeah.
So, you had to choose very carefully who could come to the reception when you were, or to the ceremony, in those original invitations. So it really was your nearest and dearest. And Michael's family had flown from Australia. They were, his immediate family were there. And over the years, like one of the starting points in all of the Buddhist practice, and I would say this is, this is generic, that sense of like opening your heart, and like when you sit down just to remember this isn't just for me, and then you start to expand it out to your friends, to your family, to the people, to strangers, to people you have difficulties with, just recognizing that just as we wish to be happy, so do all others. And so when you sit to do any formal practice, bringing that into mind as your motivation, it just opens you. So it can be abstract as well, because you're just sort of imagining it and visualizing it. But when I went into that church a couple of months ago and I sat there, I took myself back to, as you said, those vows of marriage are sacred too. And they're actually the only vows, maybe in the Catholic Church, I don't know where it stands in other traditions, where the priest is not administering them. He's just bearing witness. And those vows are they're directly between you and God, in whatever way you want to understand God. So anyway, it felt very beautiful and very powerful. And I think very much in the spirit of the T.S. Eliot poem of, coming back, coming back, coming back. And I just felt so much love and connection and gratitude for all of the intervening years since that marriage, and, the places that it has taken us to. I'm divorced now, and Michael has remarried. He has 2 lovely girls, and we had 2 boys together. They're now adults, and I think we're all doing okay.
That's great.
But it has definitely been,
That's it, Ramsey. I'll let you get a word in edgeways because, sorry, it's.
No, that's good. That's good. I do have a question. You said, that you threw the bathwater with the child. What did it mean to you at that point in time when you discovered that? And how are you using, or are you using that today in your practice, or is it 2 separate belief systems? Or how is everything working together? And I know you said everything is kind of mixed.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear a bit more detailed on that.
I think it's probably one of the guiding questions, in I would say in any of our lives, to really integrate everything. I met some very good friends of Susie's yesterday in Seattle, Marianne and Bob, and I was reflecting some of this with them in that sense of there's a very lovely Thomas Merton video, which is somebody's reading his words, and it's a pilgrimage of different Christian hermitages and contemplative communities that he visited across California, and I think and into New Mexico. And there's this so there's these beautiful nuns. They're very old, and there's one in particular, and she's saying how much she remembers Thomas Merton. And I'd say she in this video she looked about 90, and she found him to be very human. And then she talked about her own practice she had that inquisitive delight in seeing what she was saying no to. And she was dancing with her fingers. What am I saying no to? And I could really feel from her like the falling away that needs to happen. And I mean, for me, definitely Tibetan Buddhism is my anchor. It's my source. It's my place to go to. I trust it. I trust the teachings. I trust the teachers. I trust the practice. And that's not a blind faith. I mean, it has to be very open and examining. But there's no copyright on, there's a quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama to use Buddhism to become a better whatever you already are. And also, I mean, I've been talking about, that being human, but also it's even broader than that. The term for all of us, a sentient being, in Tibetan Buddhism, it's called a mind possessor.
Yeah,
That's who we really are. And so all of the forms that are available, if any valid path is authentic path is valid. But it's not about like throwing them all into a blender and making them into a smoothie. You do have, I would say, there's going to be something that's core for you. And it may not be just one, but there's something that's core that you can come back to and then step out into the world and recognize that it's reflected everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that. Sorry, I asked that question because I had to go through experiences, just dark days where faith is lost, and I threw the bathwater with the child and everything else with it. And then it came a full circle at a certain point when I discovered that everything is kind of connected and we're all victims of our minds sometimes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting that out, then you kind of square your circle, which is not true. You complete the circle and you land somewhere, but I never landed in a specific container to say, let's say I'm a Buddhist or I'm a Christian or I'm just me. And that's why I wanted to see how that worked with you, which is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
And His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, my religion is simple. My religion is kindness. Yeah. And then the question is, and His Holiness goes on to say, be kind whenever possible. And then says, it is always possible. Now, if you take that as a mathematical theorem, we do have work to do. Yeah.
We do. We so do.
So it's really about recognizing, like if we have faith in that, if we have confidence in that our essence is kind, is loving, is compassionate, is wise, if we genuinely believe and know that to be true, again, it's an exploration. But if we can keep coming back to that as our theory, then it's not just about going out and, being nice. Being nice is not enough. You need to have the wisdom aspect with it. Equanimity as well is very important, which is an ability to accept suffering, for me, equanimity, I think of it like a gyroscope that's constantly able to it's not indifference. It's wide open, but also tolerant and patient and able to recognize that there's a bigger, more spacious, longer term picture that we might not be seeing.
Yeah.
Well, most of the time, not 99.9% of the time, not seeing.
That's a beautiful analogy for equanimity, that kind of gyroscope, like constantly in motion, constantly moving, a little to the left, to the right. It's sort of it's just navigating from a place of that compassion or
Yeah.
peacefulness, at least, that we can come back to that center point, I suppose, in the gyroscope, that, so we can't avoid the suffering, we can't avoid challenges. That's the life, but
Yeah.
it's how we kind of go through it, and without getting kind of hijacked or
Yeah.
sidetracked or whatever. Like, and it's the mind is designed in such a way. I think the kind of conditioning that we kind of grow up with, and the beliefs and stuff that we kind of unconsciously kind of accept,
Yeah.
and then they get challenged. And that would be a good segue to talk about the practice as such. So when you become a practicing Buddhist, like there's obviously a big commitment at that point to become a practicing Buddhist, but then from there it's to kind of go fully into it then with the ordination and becoming a nun. So were you practicing for a long time, and like roughly, like how much work is involved in being a Buddhist? You know what I mean? Is it, the way we've been Catholics, and it's kind of like, some people say they're recovering Catholics, and some people say that they're, they go to mass at, I don't know, Christmas Day or something, like pick and choose a little bit. Is it the same with Buddhism, or is it really like shifting your entire belief system, or going into a different structure as such? Like, I don't know enough about it, to be honest. So,
I think initially it can certainly feel like that you have this, that so I'll answer it in a different way. I was visiting women's prison recently. About 20 years ago, I was visiting men's prison. And then just recently, I was visiting women's prison. And the dynamic in there was very different. And I guess, I was coming into it 20 years later as well as a practitioner. And what I saw in the women, and this would have been the case with the men too when I was visiting there, they were hungry for anything that they could identify with, which wasn't like they were basically saying, this, I'm not okay. This package is not okay. And they're literally, they're literally wearing the clothing that's saying to them, you're bad, you're negative. So they're hungry to jump ship from that persona. And so I turn up and it's like, oh, we're all going to become Buddhists. But what we do, and I did this too, I'm still running away from myself. Like, I mean, one definition of a Buddhist is an inner being. You're like, we're turned outwards all the time towards the whole world, sensory perceptions, and that includes the mental perceptions that are busy. That's self another too. Like, the dualistic mind, the conceptual mind. If I do this, then that. But if I go there, then that. We know this. There's no end to it. There's no ease to it. There's no freedom in it. If we stay locked into it and believing it and chasing it. So really it's about, I would say the first step and the hardest step is, can I just be okay with how I am in all of my messiness? Can I just be with it? Can I rest in it? Can I accept it? Can I know it to see the truth of the suffering without like, something's got to be done about this. I have to not it. So I was saying again, like this beautiful, simple quote from Pema Chodron, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
If we can rest in that, rest in it, not try to fix it, not ignore it, not deny it, not exaggerate it. But if we can just rest with it, we're already in a bigger, spacious, more aware relationship with what's happening in our lives. Again, like you were saying, that gyroscope aspect, that ease, that recognition that we are not our thoughts. We have thoughts, but we are not. Jetsunma says, the mind makes a lousy boss and a great servant.
Yeah. Wow.
It's moving from being controlled by the mind to seeing how we're controlled by the mind, and then opening up a little bit of spaciousness to be more responsive rather than reactive. You have to be very, very honest with it. You have to see where you are with it. It has to be really, authentically, directly related to your experience. Putting on the robes, and Jetsunma says this too, the mind does not shave its head. So even relying on the robes as like, oh yeah, now I'm okay.
Wow. So yeah, that's really insightful. My gosh. I feel like there's so many things happening in the world today that people, you gave the example of the women in the women's prison, and I know you've been in men's prisons as well, and over the course of the 20 years where you've been traveling, and I know that you've been teaching in dharma centers and community centers online, in various retreats and stuff that you've been giving in Dharmasala and so on. But they're the people, I think, the people who show up to those situations are kind of what's the word? They self-selecting,
Absolutely.
they're coming to you. And, but then in the greater, the greater world, like there's just all this kind of chaos and stuff going on. And, like people don't even know that it's as bad as it is because of being so caught up in the reactionary mind, or in whatever way the mind is, feeling, or I suppose reacting is the only word I can think of to what's going on around the world at the moment. So, what's the difference, do you think, between the people who are already on some sort of a path that are self-selecting versus kind of working, in an environment where, like you said, walking into the prison, that really struck me, that they were like, okay, there's help on the way. Like this person represents something that we're looking for in here. The difference is big, I think, isn't it? Like,
yeah, one time I went in with Venerable Robina, and she was teaching this group of men, and it was one of my first times in prison. So I was kind of like, it's obviously a very triggering environment. But they were literally sitting on the edge of their seats as she was teaching. I was watching them. I could see them. They were like, it was like water in a desert. They were like, what they were hearing, they knew it to be true, because you're walking into that space, a space where you're defined by your negativity, as I said earlier. And it was one of the most powerful truths, I would say, is you are defined by your goodness. You've got all of this crazy stuff going on, and it's not just because you're defined by your goodness doesn't mean that we're going to open the prison cell and you can all come home. They need to be there. In many ways it's a failed system as well, but that's another discussion. But that restraint is needed, and essentially, if you look at it from a moral perspective, it's creating the space where you're not going to act out your negativities of body and speech impacting on society. Again, plenty of that's happening in the prison as well, but the principle of that is there. So they're there, they get this teaching, and I can see them like just soaking it in. And as we're leaving the prison, we're walking across the car park, and I'm looking at my watch. It was in the days when we had them. And I'm thinking, okay, so we've got to be wherever by such and such time. I think we've got time for a cappuccino. And as I was planning that, Venerable Robina said, the difference between them and us is that for them, that was the highlight of their day. And they're in there now. And it's like they're brewing it. It's going from up here and it's dropping down into their hearts. And so they will become the teachings. This is the process. Hear it, contemplate, meditate on it. But she said, yeah, so they're in there letting it seep in. We're planning the next activity. And so I was like, and so this really comes back to, well, first of all, for the prison population, and as you say, they're stepping forward because they have recognized the first truth, which is the truth of suffering. They know it. They know it to be true. If we're busy planning for the cappuccino, I'm taking refuge. There's nothing wrong with having the cappuccino, but it's the idea that I'm taking refuge in it, that's where my happiness lies. And so that's one of the very important parts. And we all know this, we talk about getting wake-up calls. But really what the wake-up call is doing as well is it's telling us life is impermanent.
Yeah.
And that's one of our huge ones, that it's the deepest teaching. And this is to understand the truth of reality, interdependence, causes and conditions. There's nothing static. We believe ourselves to be solid, permanent, separate, and independent. And that's the source of all of our problems, because it's a mistake. And because it's a mistake, we can rectify it. And that's where all of the practice comes in. I mean, you were asking about practice earlier. Like, it comes down into two key things. One, and they're called calm abiding and special insight. The first one is to calm the mind down. And that doesn't mean all the thoughts to go away, but to drop into, again, that more recognized, that more spacious, open, deeper place out of which all the thoughts can come and go. There's space for all of it. So that calming the mind down, and then penetrative insight, which is, once you've calmed down, you can then start to examine it and like penetrate directly into the truth of it, the truth of our experience of how the mind works and how reality works.
So well, so many things. My head is like, like, so when you, okay, so you're training your mind, I can follow that, and meditation and following the breath and being in your body, things like that really help with it. But then with the examination of the nature of the mind, is that like contemplation outside of the practice as you go through the day after the practice? Or is that part of a practice where you just see what thought is arising? Where did it arise from? And letting it go again without engaging with it? Is that sort of how it goes? Or
yeah, there are many techniques, and I think they're often spoken of as like as almost as if they're separate. Shamatha, or sorry, calm abiding, special insight. But really, as we cultivate the calm abiding, if we stay open, because you can end up going, like some people when they do meditation practice, some people have very nice blissful experiences. Everything's calm and spacious and open. That's very attractive.
it is.
Yeah. And so this happens. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
A grasping. And so this is our whole problem, is that we are grasping everything and anything and believing it to be permanent. So when we find out that it's not permanent, we're well, we no, I want it back. I got to get more of that. So that's a little bit of a trap, actually. It can be.
It's like a gateway drug, I call it, that bliss, that ananda, that feeling and sensation. It's what keeps drawing you back into the practice, because it's better than anything you can ingest. Like, it's a really soothing feeling.
Yes. And it's a feeling, and all feelings are transitory.
Yeah.
And it could go for quite a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still transitory. Like there's this, and so what we have to wake up to is that will take care of itself. The bliss will take care of itself, because it's in our nature. It's, and we have, I mean, we hear the word and you kind of, it's capital B and underlined and bliss. But we can feel it in a very, very subtle way as well. You just close your eyes and just feel the tingling that's going through your body. It's, it's there. Um, but and it's every time we, see a beautiful landscape or have a joyful experience, it's not out there. We experience it because it's the source of it's in here. These are triggering. But equally, those meditation experiences are just triggers. They're not the source. So I would say our job, and Jetsunma says this, if you want to bring Buddhism down into a single phrase, it's let go. Let go. And then she said, if you want to make that holy, you can say let go, hum pe. But let go. And I think Jack Cornfield, when he went to one of his teachers after he had been doing long-term retreat, and he had lots of, wonderful, blissful experiences, and he was describing them to his teacher. And his teacher went, great, more stuff to let go of.
Yeah.
So the letting go, it's not, Tsoknyi Rinpoche describes it as like becoming carefree, but not careless. And that's important. So again, it's coming back to being very open. And in that openness, so what we're loosening is the grip on solid, permanent, separate, independent me. So each time we have an opening towards wanting to help somebody, or particularly when it's a spontaneous, I mean, it's kind of easy with people that we love. But and again, this comes back to, kindness is always possible. So this transcends who is worthy of my love? It's unconditional. It's not transactional. We're seeing the world again through that lens of solid, separate, permanent, independent. And so then the world is divided up into categories of friend, enemy, stranger. There's no other category. And then on those and these are through the lens of I like, I don't care. But all of it again is I am solid, I am separate, I am independent, I am permanent. And then you have that separation that we believe, that's, we hear it in phrases like a bottomless pit of neediness, constantly trying to fill this black hole. Again, it's just a mistake, but we have to see that directly and recognize it directly, that it is mistaken. We can hear about it, think about it, read about it, follow the teachings. And it is good to follow teachings because it'll save time if they're authentic.
So let's just say somebody's listening to our conversation now, Aileen, and, they're looking for something. They don't even know what they're looking for yet. Like, I know everybody's journey starts off differently, but if you were to offer something, is there a particular book or type of practice or maybe online resource that somebody could get started with?
There is a lot out there. First, I'll recall, I just read recently somebody who asked a very similar question at the start of her path, and the person that she asked said to her, pray. And I mean, this is an important word, and again, it's very loaded, but I would say prayer is like, again, that opening of the heart and kind of aiming towards and aspiring towards and longing and seeking something that you recognize and you identify with. And you're just asking for help for that to become clearer. But he said, pray to wisdom, compassion, and awareness, to show up in whatever form it wishes. Let the form take care of itself. But our direct relationship is to cultivate and to expand wisdom, compassion, and awareness. And again, Tsoknyi, Mingyur Rinpoche speaks of, like, what makes you officially a Buddhist is taking refuge. You're taking refuge in the Buddha, and he's compared to the doctor. You're taking refuge in the dharma, the teachings, the medicine, and you're taking refuge in the spiritual community, the nurse that administers. And Rinpoche then takes that back a step further and says, we're taking refuge again in awareness, compassion, and wisdom. These are the qualities. So making the aspirations for these are our birthright. This is our innate goodness. And so when we make those prayers and aspirations, we could connect it to an outer form if there's something that we feel, is valid. But essentially it's in our own goodness, and it will manifest in external forms. There's a recognition there.
I see.
Sorry, Ramsey, go ahead.
Oh no, I agreed with her. I was
Sorry,
I was taking it all in. I apologize.
Yeah, just recently I read a book which I've been recommending, and it's an old book, but it was written by Sharon Salzberg.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's called Faith. And the subtitle is Trusting Your Own Deepest Experience. And it's very much an autobiography. I mean, she could probably write another one now, because this was at least 20 years ago, I'd say. I don't know how long. Maybe more than 20 years ago. I find it a very beautiful book, because it's very, it is direct, her own direct experience. She's very honest with it. And so she shares her rawness and her vulnerabilities and her suffering. And she also shares her deep faith and how she cultivates that over time. And again, the faith essentially is in our own goodness. That's ultimately the faith that we need to wake up to.
Would you say, Aileen, that's beautiful? That's a really, really beautiful sort of, I think, intention to have. Like, or it's nice to know that within us is the potential for that. That's inherently who we truly are at the root, or in our hearts. And I was just thinking about, in terms of, like, everything has been evolving. We talk about people living extraordinary lives, and we're in this kind of conscious evolution at the moment. And so, like, even this conversation, I think, it's fascinating that, if I thought I'd be having this conversation even 15 years ago, I wouldn't have recognized myself in it, And so my question to you now is, like, how has Buddhism evolved, I guess, since you first started? And obviously it's changed a lot. Not necessarily the teachings have stayed the same, but maybe has it evolved in the West more? Has it grown a lot in the West? Is there a lot more demand? Because there seems to be a lot of really incredible, like you mentioned, Sharon Salzberg. There's some great teachers out there, like, as well, and they're teaching in the West, like, so you don't necessarily have to go to India, although it's quite nice. So, like, what would you say?
No, it definitely is evolving. And I mean, you were asked, like, I would also recommend, and this is not to the exclusion of any other organizations, I'm just mentioning, some that I know, but tergar.org, which is Mingyur Rinpoche's meditation community. I mean, they have a very beautiful, multi-layered online program. And also you can do it in hybrid, you can, depending on where you live. There's a lot of opportunity to build up a community really well. And the introductory levels of that it's called Joy of Living levels 1, 2, and 3. And they're focusing on awareness, compassion, and wisdom, cultivating those qualities within ourselves. So that package in and of itself doesn't go into any of the the more traditional spiritual practices, the rituals and so on. And all of them too are in their foundation. There's still the work is the same. It's about you're using methods to wake up. I'm sure some of like in Tibetan Buddhism, you're visualizing deities and so on. And that can very easily get misunderstood as, some sort of deity worship. But a very good example of that, and it's very outdated, I know, Tiger Woods, as if you had him if you were training to be a fantastic golfer, it would be, you might have a picture of Tiger Woods on your wall to inspire you, but you're watching his form. And so everything about his body is kind of, the perfect golfing machine. And so there's nothing about it that's surplus. It's like everything has been tuned, and it's the essence of the Buddha of golf. So you would cultivate a direct relationship with the Buddha of golf to become a better golfer. But you're out there doing all of the training. But that technique also of visualizing yourself and connecting and being one with, that's also valid. And you see that in sports psychology, like visualizing yourself receiving the gold medal, visualizing yourself crossing the finish line. So it's called bringing the result into the path. So it's working with that, like saying it's all here in us. And so then it's taking the next step of, it's actually, again, it's a mistake that keeps us feeling distant from it. We already are perfect. We just don't know it. And the not knowing it is a very, very deep, active not knowing.
Yeah. Is that on purpose? Are we born not knowing with this kind of spiritual amnesia?
I think probably spiritual amnesia. I mean, the Buddha was asked, that question is like, and it's kind of like perplexing. It's like, where did it all start? And what, the big questions of like, why anything? That's one of my ones, is like, but, and the Buddha's response to that is like, everything that he's teaching is to get out of suffering. And so he said, it's like you've been shot by an arrow. So focus on getting the arrow out. Don't ask where did the arrow come from, or who shot it, or why me, or, was it this long or this long, etc., etc. Like all of that is irrelevant. Just get free of suffering. And I'd like to think that then everything will just take care of itself. All of the other, like the spiritual amnesia, whatever. Yeah, I think it'll all.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of like spiritual malnutrition is another one I've heard bandied around as well, because we're kept so busy over here. It's so busy to be alive in the world right now.
Yeah.
And there's so many distractions, like, my gosh.
Yeah, exactly that. All the distractions. And I mean, that again that's our key problem, is the distracted mind. We let the mind run the show. I mean, you don't wake up in the morning and go, by 11, I think I'll be depressed for a while. And then I think around 3 o'clock, I'm just going to eat far too much. And then I'll just lie on the couch for a while and go, why did you do that? So we don't plan any of that.
Yeah, true. It's true. We had a couple of days on Cape Clear, little, just for the reference, of a little island off the southwest coast of Ireland, of Cork. But there's virtually no Wi-Fi or signal or anything and it was so refreshing because that massive distraction, with this little palm thing, just was useless. It could just about tell us the time. And so it was so nice just to spend the time in nature, to spend the time outdoors, walking, hanging out together, And I thought, gosh, like that's really what retreats are about. It's about being able to step away from the wild, crazy, non-stop to-do list and scheduling. Yeah. What about retreats, Aileen? Would you? I know we got 5 or 6 minutes left, but
Yeah, retreats are important too, as you say, to get those recharges. But you can also, like what you're describing on Cape Clear and those, I like to use the word microdosing. We can microdose our meditation. We can have literally like 1 minute or 30 seconds, or when you notice that you're rushing and like we'll finish this session soon and then we're on to the next thing. Even if we just stop for 1 minute before we take the pause, rest in the pause. And if we do that regularly, that really does, it then enables us when we do go into a retreat space, we can make much better use of that time in the retreat space. If we've
yeah.
so one is informing the other. But those micro moments, they're like, don't underestimate the power of them.
Yeah, we used to teach that with the mindfulness at work.
They're very important, and I fully agree with you. I find those micro dosing moments kind of ground you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So they ground you and they reset the brain somehow where you could see things in different perspective. It's just you pull back a bit. You pull back into you before you can make the next step.
Yeah. And again, you're not letting the thoughts run the show.
Absolutely not. Yes.
Yeah.
That's still the biggest revelation. I think I've said it on about 5 episodes of this podcast. You are not your thoughts. What a liberation that was. My God. That saved me just hours of misery, like hours and hours of it. How you can just discard some of the stuff that's coming up that your mind is dredging up, like so practicing. I have a final kind of wrapping it up. We love at the end of the podcast, Aileen, to give people something that they can take away, that they can try, like even those microdosing. I love that. Everybody go away and microdose throughout these moments throughout your day. But even if you're not a traditional practicing Buddhist who's followed the teachings or has a teacher, just can you give any advice or something to help our listeners?
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe, expanding on that microdosing, the other, I mean, you could, and we know this too, like watching the breath is a very powerful practice. It's not changing the breath. It's just, again, dropping away from doing anything with it and just noticing the sensations that are there, the raw data. And we can only breathe in the present. We can't breathe in the past or the future. So like when you are having those microdoses, and you could set up, a formal practice, keep it really short and simple. Like maybe to start the day and to set your motivation, as I was saying earlier, opening it up into this expansive sense of connecting and reaching out to others, just recognizing that we are connected. And accepting that even though we are, it is the truth, we'll still bump into each other because these are deep old habits. So we just need to see them. But the focusing on the breath, it's giving the mind, the monkey mind, a job. And so every time we notice that we're lost, that's an important moment when we notice, oh, I was gone, then we come back. That's where the new habit is being developed. So in the moment that we're lost, even if we were gone for 10 minutes planning, our next holiday, and then we go, oh, I was meant to be watching the breath. Don't criticize yourself in that moment. Like, oh, for God's sake, I can't even remember to do that. Drop that. Just drop it. Oh, great. Back to the breath. So you're not giving energy to those stories.
I love that. And I think another key takeaway would be to that let go. Let go. It's really when you feel like you're grasping or you're after jumping on the merry-go-round of God knows what, like just to let go and just back to your breath, I guess. Like that's a nice
and a good time to notice that. And again, this is not you know, in the really difficult situations. But if somebody cuts in front of you in the queue, and you kind of because you're seeing the separate, you know, I have had somebody in front of me. You're seeing the I, that mistaken sense of self. So when you see it, oh, there it is, and then drop it. You can do it in retrospect too. You know, if you get, excuse me, I was here, and you do all of that. Just have a look at it afterwards. Not to criticize it, but just to notice how that shows up in the body, all of that energetic oomph, and you just see it.
Wow. So many amazing nuggets in this. This hour has flown. I swear,
Yeah.
I feel like we could do another 2 hours at least, but I wouldn't dream of doing that to you, because I can't thank you enough. Honestly, like, I know what a huge journey you've just come from, like coming from, you know, Seattle to Cork. It's no easy feat, like, and even that drive down from Dublin, that's the hardest part of the whole journey, if you ask me. So Aileen, I really, really appreciate it. You're a star, and we definitely would love to have you back on, because you've got so many jewels to teach us, I think. So thank you for me.
Keep doing what
Thank
you're
you.
doing. It's just splendid. It's really so precious, and you know, it's the most essential thing the most important thing that we could ever do is to recognize who we really are and walk each other home. I love that phrase from
Yeah.
Ramdas. We're walking each
Ramdas.
other home. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners who's been with us for the past hour. And we'll see you next Thursday for another episode of In12D. Have an awesome evening, afternoon. See you next week.